My name is Twyla Francois. I'm Head of Investigations for Canadians for the Ethical Treatment of Food Animals. My work with CFIA involves farm animal cruelty investigations, in particular when they're on transport or in auctions, collecting stations, and slaughterhouses. I guess the thing that was the most shocking for me when I first started this was, like other Canadians, I fully expected that our government was actually providing the protection for farm animals. And what's become really sadly clear is that they aren't at any level of government, not municipal, not provincial, not federal. And not only are they not doing routine inspections in most provinces, Ontario is the exception, but when incidences of abuse are brought to their attention, including law enforcement standard of evidence collection, full footage, television broadcast quality footage, even when these are brought to the government's attention, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency in particular, nothing has been done. And I can literally say nothing. The kinds of things I've seen are pretty unbelievable, and anyone who saw them would understand that these are cruel practices and it's abuse. But because they fall under routine practices, they're accepted. For example, on-farm practices, and these things would include tooth breaking in bores, where rusty bolt cutters are used to break their bottom tusks, but the tusks are actually just elongated incisors, just like ours. They have an innervated pulp canal, but twice a year and before transport, to get around the federal regulations that stipulate that boars can't be loaded together because they'll fight and they'll kill each other. There's a couple of things that are done to alter the boar rather than actually altering the transport, as they've done in Europe. So these two teeth are broken with rusty bolt cutters. It cuts straight through the pulp canal, breaks into, shatters the tooth into the gum line. It's excruciatingly painful, and we have full footage of this happening. But because it's considered a routine practice, there's nothing illegal about it. It continues. Another practice that's done is boar bashing, where the boars are having their noses beaten in with crowbars. And the point of that is to break their nose and cause enough pain that they can then be loaded together without fighting. So it's just, there's sort of all these unscrupulous things that are happening that everybody's aware of in industry for sure. And that government is aware of, and yet they're allowed to continue. There's no actual regulations, there's no laws governing on-farm practices. So gestation crates for sows, where they're confined in metal crates 2 feet by 7 feet, they're fully allowed. And I've actually been documenting the same barn full of sows for about 3 years now. And I mean, it's just horrible to see it. When I first was there, they were young gilts, they were quite small. They were put into the crates. They were still reaching out for one another, trying to make contact. By year 2, they've completely withdrawn. They've got the huge open ulcers that are festering. Their piglets have been packed in front of them. Pack, it's P-A-C, it's an industry term meaning pounded against concrete. And the piglets are, what's happened is we've bred them to have more piglets than teats, and so there's generally about 2 that are what industry calls shakers. They're not strong on their feet, they're the weaker of the bunch. And these 2 piglets are packed. They're grabbed by their rear legs, their head is smashed into the ground. This is all done in front of the mother. This is standard industry practice. There's nothing illegal about it. But a number of the piglets are still remaining alive, and for up to a week. And it's not just my evidence that's found this. A rendering company in Ontario sent letters out to all of the pig producers that it picks up from, reminding them to please ensure their piglets are dead before they're thrown in the bin, because it's traumatic for the rendering company guys to be picking up bins, and as they're dumping them, still live piglets or wiggling around. So this company actually had to install a camera in the dump truck and a monitor in the cab of the truck. But so these sows have been seeing this. They've been driven crazy. They exhibit these stereotypies of head bobbing or repetitively chewing on the bars of their cages. By year 3, 80% of them have arthritis, so severe that their hind legs are fused. So moving them becomes difficult. As it is, pigs seem to be singled out for abuse. And so if they're moving slower, they're that much more at risk for abuse. And so that's when we see things like hitting with pipes, and we have footage of this being done in front of a CFIA inspector who did nothing about it. Nothing was done to the inspector. There was no punishment. We see electric prods being pushed up the vaginas of sows. But in Canada, much of our deliveries are done at night, which is sort of unfathomable to me. And even if you do happen to, someone happens upon this injured animal, and a downer is an animal that's so sick, diseased, or injured that it's unable to stand on its own. But even if somebody would come across this animal and call CFIA, you better hope you're calling between 9 and 5 or you're not going to get anybody. And even if you do get somebody, CFIA inspectors can't euthanize animals, which it's sort of, I think as Canadians we think that these bodies will take care of suffering animals, but they actually can't. And a number of the CFIA inspectors have told me how frustrating this is, that they entered the job wanting to help animals, and then they're crippled by the regulations that are in place that prevent them from doing so. My very first meeting with CFIA, it was made clear that the regulations were put in place years ago, and the only reason they were put in place was for hygiene. And if you look at CFIA's mandate in the Federal Department of Agriculture, their only mandate is actually to encourage and increase the consumption of Canadian agricultural products. So we've got this conflict of interest where even when human health is at stake, even when we have diseases like BSE, there is an encouragement to not expose it because it's going to shut down borders. The U.S. will not take our meat anymore. So it's this system that's supposed to be protecting animals and protecting our health, but it has this mandate that's completely at odds with what we think it should be doing. Livestock agriculture can be done more humanely. They're doing it in Europe. The Netherlands has banned castration of piglets. There's no purpose for doing it. They are killed so young that they don't develop boar taint from the hormones. So it's just this redundant thing that's being done with no anesthetics, no analgesics. It's just being done sheerly out of tradition. And all of these other things like cutting off tails, microwaving off birds' toes, and this is done with turkeys all the time, cutting off beaks of birds. We're butchering their beaks. It's intensely painful. New research shows that it's equal to a human having an amputated limb and being fully conscious. Their beaks are richly innervated, more so than our fingertips. And they develop phantom limb pain for the rest of their life. But we're doing all of these things because we keep them confined. So if we opened up the spaces that they had, and I mean, we're in Canada, we have so much space. If we opened up that space, we wouldn't have to be so brutally altering the bodies of these animals, because they wouldn't be pecking each other, they wouldn't be driven mad, and they wouldn't be hurting one another as they are now because they're so stressed. So yeah, that this is our goal, is just to get exposure to these issues, make Canadians informed, and hopefully we'll all start voting with our pocketbooks and altering what we're willing to accept and what we want.